2013, after a 10-year assignment working and living in Switzerland, my husband and I repatriated back to the United States. And by profession, I'm a chief diversity officer, and I've been doing this work for close to 30 years in 4 different industries, both inside and outside of the United States. And one of my assignments took me to Switzerland. And when we came back, I paused and I said, do I really want to do more of the same that I've been doing for the past however many years, or do I want to hit the reset button and do something different? Mm-hmm. And while I was deciding that, I had talked to a friend of mine who was a publisher, and she said, Michelle, you have a story in you, and it would be wonderful for you to share that story with others. And I had been hearing that over the years by a number of colleagues in different companies that I've worked for. And so I finally decided to just put pen to paper and to get it done. In 2015, I quit my job on Wall Street. I was working for Credit Suisse. I was their global chief diversity officer. And I decided that I wanted to start my own consultancy practice. Mm-hmm. So I quit my job, started my own consultancy practice, and every Friday was my writing day. And so 18 months later was the result of the book. So it was something that I've always wanted to do. It wasn't even a matter of if, it was a matter of when. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to share an unvarnished, truthful story about my climb, my journey in corporate America. It's really interesting. I sat on a panel with Sheryl Sandberg a few years ago when her book Lean In came out. And I remember reading her book, and it really didn't speak to me as a woman of color. Mm-hmm. In terms of my journey. And, it's interesting. I always say that there are some of us who have an easy go of it in terms of our careers, and they can take the proverbial elevator up to the C-suite, and others not so much. We have to take the stairs with a backpack and no air conditioning. Yes. And so that was my journey. Uh-huh. And so I really wanted to share my journey. And when you think about the title and the term climb and what that means, it means to ascend, to go upward with gradual or continual progress. And it's a term that I've used to describe my career over the years. Mm-hmm. So I was very intentional in terms of the title, in terms of what I was going to share, what I was going to talk about, the companies that I've worked for, and mm-hmm. the good, the bad, and everything else in between, mm-hmm. and give you my truth, my version of Lean In, my climb.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. I think you're absolutely right. Everyone's journey is different. And I think one narrative kind of confuses the other, because when you hear, stories from other people, you assume that that's what your story should look like. And if it doesn't, then you think, is my story good enough? Why is my story not matching hers? What are the things that are keeping us from that? And quite often we don't get to hear the narratives from the C-suite to get a full understanding of what it takes to sit in that chair, what it means to invite people to that table, what it means, what are the unvarnished truths of a story?
Exactly.
Yeah. And some of the loads that you're carrying so that other opportunities can be created for women, such as myself and others who want to also blaze a trail, whatever that trail may be. And I'm kind of curious, Michelle, because I've told you this before, your confidence is amazing. I love the posture. I love your certainty. Have you always been that woman?
I believe that I have, but that woman has evolved over the years. Uh-huh. And I think, now I'm over 50. Uh-huh. So that confidence level has probably plateaued to a certain extent, because I believe that I'm kind of at the tail end of my career, so to speak. Uh-huh. And I believe that I've done all the things that I've wanted to do. And now I get more gratification out of helping the next generation of leaders, women, particularly women of color, realize what's possible and realize their ambition. She's evolved over the years for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in her early years, did she know that being an author was on the list? I mean, I know you said it was something you always wanted to do. Does that date back to early always, or collegiate always?
Yes. I've always enjoyed, I'm a voracious reader. I read at some point in times, sometimes 2 books at a clip at a time. So I've always enjoyed reading about others. But I really wanted to tell my own story. And it was just a matter of, how was I going to do this? Who do I need to connect to? What was the process going to look like? So yeah, I was going to make it happen one way or the other.
Got it. So in terms of telling your story, that's a big part of what I think makes a difference between those of us who feel good about the life we live and people who feel like there's still more left on their list. And so for a lot of people, I even see a comment here from Nat's iPhone. Nat, who's in Huntsville, is saying, I'm always fascinated by people, especially Black women who quit lucrative high profile jobs to become entrepreneurs. It's easy when you have nothing, but to step out on faith when you're already successful by most people's standards is remarkable. It is remarkable, right? It is, and it is true. And I think, Michelle, so there's a bit of, in the storytelling, there's always pivots, right? Because that's where the chapters come from. It's like, we have these new chapters, but most of us are living one long chapter. And that long chapter, you know, there's the hope that one day we can unleash this other part of our story, or there's this hope that we can pivot and make a big faith decision or a gut decision, whatever that guiding decision is, to a new dimension. How important was that for you to say, this is it for me? One chapter's closing, a new one's beginning. And I'm not going to get too deep into the book tonight. I'm not doing that because then we're going to spoil some chapters. But I do want to get into the mind of the author, because I think that's most powerful.
Yeah, I always live my life with intention. And every decision that I've made, good, bad, or indifferent, has led me down a path. And it's led me through my journey line. And I think that every decision, every fail, has been a step in the right direction. Every blip, every whatever happened along the way has been a terrific experience for me. So it was more, to your point, a matter of stepping out on faith and leveraging an ecosystem that I've built over the years, an ecosystem of sponsors, mentors, individuals who have done this work before, talking to other Black women who have done it and done it successfully, reaching out to, a lot of my white male colleagues who were uber successful, to learn tips and tools of the trade. This was new territory that I was embarking on. And it wasn't easy because, we're all used to having that business card with our title on it, having, the steady paycheck that comes every 2 weeks or every 30 days or whatever it is. So it's really, you're stepping out on faith. And you have to be prepared for what comes with that. No infrastructure behind you. You have an assistant at work who's doing all the tactical administrivia. And then you pick that up, but you're also the face of the company at the same time. So you just need to be realistic and go into these decisions with your eyes open. And also doing your homework long before. And then also understanding, look, people don't pay on time.
That's right.
They don't. They just don't. But it was interesting. I would be the face of the company, and my husband and I would call on clients. But then Thursdays and Fridays, we dedicated to chasing invoices.
Oh my goodness.
And that's a pain in the neck. So these are things that you learn over time, not necessarily overnight. But one of the things that I will say, though, is I loved being an entrepreneur. Loved it, because I could show up any way that I wanted to. I could say, I didn't have to think about politics or anything like that. I could, just be daring and be honest and truthful and not mince my words. And so all of those things that I was so concerned about working in a corporate environment all those years, that fell by the wayside. So I felt empowered. I felt like a real executive. And so I felt like I could just show up and show out any place I've ever gone. And it's liberating on so many levels. It really is.
So have you, because part of that too is understanding, like you said, you love that chapter of entrepreneurship, but you've been assigned a whole army of women that you are sort of almost deploying in the work that you do. So what were some of the internal signals that you took to know when it was time to make the next shift?
Just intuition. Sometimes when it's time to tap the mat. as I say.
But we act like we don't know what we know. And a lot of times it confuses us, right? So
yeah, I knew when it was time to tap the mat. I had conversations with my husband long before I didn't just walk in and quit my job.
mm-hmm,
He and I had conversations long before that. I was unhappy. I felt like an imposter. I felt like I was walking into these places and spaces and doing the same thing over and over again. And quite frankly, I wasn't happy where I was. And I just didn't feel good about that. Just collecting a paycheck, but not feeling as if you're making some sort of a contribution to the world, to people, to the company. At least I didn't feel that way. So I needed to do something about that. And I spoke to David and I said, I think I want to do something different. And that different does not include the company that I worked for at that time. So I trust my gut. I trust my instinct.
Let me ask you a little bit about trusting your gut and instinct, because again, I think sometimes things get complex for us when we second guess the thing that we know, we see, we feel, and hear. And it might be a contradiction to what is in front of us. Maybe we're not necessarily prepared to be an entrepreneur or to go into corporate, whatever the shift. It doesn't have to be professional, it could be personal. But how did you build up the muscle to learn to trust your instinct and to know that it was good for you?
I think over the years, one of the things that I've done is invest in myself. And I know I've done the self-assessment. I know myself very well. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm great at. I know what I'm not great at. And so I trust my instinct. And it's never led me down a path of, just nonsense. I just really, just look for that inner voice to tell me, does this make sense for me and my husband and my family, or does this not make sense?
Yeah.
So I think you just have to take that step back, weigh the pros and cons of the situation. I call it a plus delta, just weigh it down a page. And then wherever you net out, that's where you need to be. But for me, it's always been my instinct. It's never led me down a path of wrong.
You just said something very key, because you talked about investing in yourself. And I have a friend who thinks it's absolutely crazy. I do a SWOT analysis on myself. I do these often.
No, that's genius. I think that's smart.
I want to locate the shortcomings and the strengths so that I can, pad myself where I need and not be exhausted on things that don't make sense. And that investing in yourself is something I think is new to women, because women are now learning that having emotional intelligence and having a connection to your instinct and trusting it can take you further than listening to the other voices,
Absolutely.
And so it's a new investment that people are making. But what are some of the different investments that you kind of make in yourself to make sure your alignment is there?
I create what I call a learning board for myself. I've worked because I'm a specialist at what I do. For me to stretch and grow as a professional, I would have to leave one industry and transition to another in order to be bigger, better, bolder, faster at whatever it was I was doing. So I've done this work in consumer goods. I've done it on Wall Street. I've done it in professional services. I've done it, as an entrepreneur. So for me, a learning board was critical. So I now work in the tech industry for Accenture, which is a professional services firm, but what we sell is services around tech. And that's a muscle that I haven't flexed at all. So I've had to learn different languages, Oracle, SAP, Workday. So for me, my learning board was understanding, how you have your IQ and EQ. I had to have a TQ in order to be bigger, better, bolder, faster, and to compete with my peers. I've had to create a learning board for myself. In addition to going into an organization that I'm new, I'm going in at a very senior level. I don't know the players. I don't know the culture. So in addition to all of those things, I had to bone up on the technical skills.
A learning board. Oh my goodness, great girlfriends. I love that. Because it sort of sets the stage for the things that you plan to commit to your career or to your life or whatever that necessary growth goal is. So I think that is so powerful. So in terms of that, I want to skip back a little bit, because I want them to understand who you are as a woman from a family perspective. I know that there's There's she's double. She's a twin. Great girlfriends and
An identical
identical.
twin, yes. And
Down
that
to the
comes with
dimple.
complexity. And I write about that in the book. It's complex. I'm not sure if anyone who's tuned in today or this evening, if you're an identical twin or a fraternal, whatever the case is. But one of the things that we wrestle with as twins is your own sense of uniqueness, your own sense of identity, your own sense of self outside of your siblingship. Because what happens is when you're growing up, people tend to pair you as a unit. And so you never really have this sense of individuality. And because my twin, we looked exactly alike, she's 3 minutes older. It was, it was always twin. Instead of someone calling me by my first name, they would say, "Oh, twin." And I couldn't stand that. And I said, I really wanted to be different. I wanted to be unique outside of my twin siblingship. This has nothing to do with the relationship that I have with her. I love her to death. But I just wanted to, I had something to say. I had my own voice. And so I really wanted to kind of break out of the mold and venture off and be my own person. And so you fast forward to current day, I probably still do a lot of that. I wrestle with my sense of individuality. And I think a lot about how am I going to differentiate myself from everyone else? It's competitive out here. So what's unique and different about me versus my peers or my colleagues that I work with every single day? So I think about that a lot.
Yeah. I think that's an important question for us to all ask. What are our key differentiators? We think we need to know what makes us outstanding and, what excellence or what difference we bring to the table. Otherwise, we'll normalize a lot of what we do. Isn't it? It's fair to think if we become complacent quite fast, if we don't see where we stand out or where we are extraordinary.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So Michelle, there's an amazing man in your life that has been by your side through so much of this book and continues to be an anchor for you.
Yes.
And for many women, having the balance of a dynamic career, dynamic titles, or large level responsibility and romantic relationship, there has been a challenge there. People are struggling to figure out, without giving away too much, what has been one of the keys to you sustaining such a beautiful love story with your beau and hubby, David?
Yeah, I think having a very open, honest relationship and discussion about aspiration and making sure that we're both on the same page. I got married fairly young. I met David. We both met each other at 22, 23. We got married at 26 and we've been married ever since. We'll both be 51 in a few weeks. And so, I've always talked a lot about how important career was. And he said the same for me. He had a wonderful, career at AT&T when I met him. And he was there for 22 years. Now, here's a person who gave up his career so that I could assume my dream of working abroad, living abroad in Switzerland. When I got the big job, we moved to Switzerland. He gave up everything for me.
Wow.
And one of the things that I will say is, a career is everything, but don't lose yourself in it. And don't forget about those who have helped you to get to where you are. And in some instances, without giving too much away in the book, one of the things that I'm regretful about is there were certain situations where I may not have always been present for him and making him feel as if he mattered. Because I was so absorbed in, I got to get the work done, 2 BlackBerries and a cell phone. And I had, the big job and traveling all over the place and all of those kinds of things. But I had a beautiful man at home. And a lot of times I might not have been giving him the FaceTime and the presence that he required. And there was one particular incident where he surprised me with a beautiful vacation to Monaco one year. And I was on my BlackBerry, and this goes back at BlackBerry. It goes back a few years. And I was on my BlackBerry the entire time. And I remember him looking at me across the dinner table, and he said, "Michelle, are you going to do that the entire time? Because that's not, I didn't sign up for that. And I looked at the disappointment in his eyes and I said, you know, here's a man who gave up everything for me, and the least that I could do is be present for him. So from that point on, I said, I am going to do everything that I possibly can to make sure that he knows and understands that he matters, that he will come before this career and anything else in between. And I just show him and demonstrate to him on a regular basis that, you know, he's the number one person in my life and nothing else comes before him. So it's a hard lesson to learn, and you'll read about it in the book. But, you know, my feeling is this: if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to give you the unvarnished, vulnerable truth.
Yes.
And that's, you know, I've messed up in some instances.
Yeah.
But the lesson there is, you know, don't forget about family members, spouses, partners, those who helped you to get to where you are.
That's right. Wow. I have to thank you for being so honest about that. That's so big, because honestly, Michelle, I feel like that's a sweet spot for us, is when we see the opportunity to learn the lesson and learn it.
Yeah.
A lot of times we see the opportunity to learn the lesson, but our egos get in the way, you know, we rub and we get so abrasive and defensive and we miss. And there goes the things that really matter out the door. And we're like, what just happened? You know, it's because we owe it to ourselves to be good to the people that love us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that goes for spouses, you know, children. You know, my husband and I, we've never had children by our choice. But it goes for, you know, parents and siblings, you know, family first.
Yeah.
It's great to have a career, but, you know, especially for women of color, our families typically are our nucleus. And when things get hard, when things get rough, you're going to need that support system. So don't forget about folks.
We've got a comment here that says, thanks for sharing that, sis. My guy now is very concerned about all that I'm doing. He's worried that there won't be room for him. So it's a priority I'm making every day to keep him first.
Yep. Make him feel as if he matters, even if it's the small things. You know, I love you, leaving notes, you know, behind, calling him, you know, couple times a day and saying, you know, I love you. All that matters.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
So it brings me to my last question. And then, great girlfriends, if any of you have a question, drop it in here, because I want to make sure you get that FaceTime. Ooh, this is a good question that just hit. Okay, I'm gonna ask my question, and then I'm gonna. Oh, that's a good question right there. I'm gonna ask this next question. Can women have it all, Michelle?
In my view, I'd say absolutely not. I think it's the big, bold-faced lie. I haven't been able to do it. I think you can have it all, not all at the same time.
Yeah.
I just haven't been able to figure that out, and I wrestle with it every single day. And I've you know, enlisted the help of a life coach to try to help teach me how to figure this all out, and I still fail at it. So I'm a work in progress. So I don't believe you can have it all. I really don't.
Yeah.
I wish I were that woman.
Yeah.
I have not. I don't have the secret sauce there.
Yeah. People ask that question all the time, and I believe there's dosage, you know, of everything. And I think you get your portion when you deserve to have access to that portion. And then, you know, you get a different portion of something else. And at certain times those will intersect, but I haven't found the all at once.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't found that.
I don't think it's possible. I really don't.
I don't know that I want it either. And I say that because I think that if I were to experience that peak and then I not have it daily, I would not feel gratitude for the daily doses that I have.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes sense. Yes. That makes sense.
I kind of want to keep our gratitude steady by being grateful when there's a high of certain sorts, and, you know, and but not having that ultimate daily fireworks, you know. I think maybe that's part of what God, if I were to tap into God's psyche on that, I would say, then we wouldn't be grateful every day. We forget that every day is a gift, right?
That's right.
So here's a big question. Nat says, how do you keep from intimidating men? They all seem to be so scared of a successful woman. That's a good chuckle there.
You I get that a lot. You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I can only be the woman that I am. I can only be um, the honest, open, love hard person that I am. I don't. Such a great question. I just don't, because I hear that a lot, that I can be intimidating, not just for men, but for women as well. In some instances, and not by design either. I mean, I think a lot of my toughness comes from, you know, I live with a chronic illness every single day, and to me, that's scary. I've had some very serious surgeries and things, and you know, just health challenges over the years. So I think I have this tough exterior because of a lot of that. I've worked in industries with a lot of men, and so I've had to toughen up quite a bit because I may have been the only woman, let alone person of color, in the room. So I think that I've just developed this rough, tough exterior. Not
Where
by
is
my
that,
design.
Michelle? I don't see that.
I hear it a lot. My team at Accenture, they tell me that sometimes I can be intimidating. I've heard it from 6'5" white men tell me that, and I'm 5'2.5". Tell me that I can be intimidating. I said, "What is this, Napoleon syndrome? Like, I don't get it." But you know, one of the things I will say is that I genuinely care about people. And I will do everything that I can to make sure that another woman, particularly another woman of color, that she is covered, that she succeeds, that she's championed, that she feels as if she doesn't have to deal with the same types of things, pitfalls, and other challenges that I dealt with early on in my career. So I genuinely and deeply care about people. So I'm not sure if that really sufficiently answered the question, but all I can do is be the best version of myself every day.
Well, Nat says, okay, so Dr. Dye says, yes, he told me that he was intimidated on week 1 of meeting me. I think we're talking about her beau. And then Nat says, or rather, where do you find a man secure enough to not be intimidated? Do I need to move? And that's in Huntsville. He says, I'm the only person of color in my branch. You definitely develop a thick skin. It's helpful at work, but detrimental in my dating life. So we're talking dating life here.
Yeah, but I don't believe in like code switching. You know what I mean? Like I'm pretty even and balanced and consistent with whomever I'm around. So I think consistency is the key. That person who's for you and who's meant for you will come eventually at some point. My person came early in my life. He came when I was 23. And I wasn't even looking for someone to have a serious relationship with at that point in time. So I think every woman will find her partner, find her mate, find her man. Sometimes he just doesn't come right away. They show up in the most unique of situations. Like, I met my husband on a blind date through a man who saw me sitting in the lobby of AT&T in Basking Ridge, New Jersey.
Wow.
Go figure. He said, I have a friend that I work with that I want to introduce you to, and we've been together ever since. So you'd be surprised how you meet your mate and your partners. So yeah, they come eventually. They show up. Yeah, but I think consistency is the key.
Yeah. I love that, because there's a bit of code switching in our culture. I think that happens a lot. And I don't think you ever want to be anyone different than yourself when you're in a relationship, because you'll never feel safe, and you'll never feel comfortable there.
Yeah.
So I love that you're saying that message, Nat, is to be consistent. And I also hear you saying, Michelle, that just as much as you require safe space, you've also given David safe space. So you're attentive to his cues. And, it didn't take him many more past Monaco for you to say, all right,
Right.
I'm going to need to create some safety for him too.
Right. But I think having, they say ambitious people often go with or marry other ambitious people. The key, I think, and Michelle Obama said it really well, is marrying someone who is your equal in terms of, aspiration and career and motivation and value system and all those things. Those are important. Very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Yes. I couldn't agree more. I wanted to, and Nat goes on to say you're an inspiration. So
thank you.
I would agree with that. Does anyone else have a question? I see Dr. Dye, you want to go live? I see you. Hey.
Hi, Dr. Dye.
Hey, Michelle. Hey, Sybil. Thank you so much. I've been listening to the book. I think I'm on chapter 3. And I love it. I love all of the pieces of just, when you go into the workplace. I mean, I'm an ER physician and I'm a fitness coach. And so the intimidation piece, that we were talking about earlier, I'm divorced and dating. And so that's one piece for me. 2 things I want to talk about, but that's one piece for me where I meet so many guys who they go on my page and they're like, oh my God, they see like all this stuff and they're just like, stop in their tracks.
Yeah.
And I mean, like Sybil said, this is who you are. You're not going to be less than that or dim your light so somebody can. So that's a real challenge for me for dating. And then as far as in the workplace, I work in emergency medicine. It's very male dominated, especially for Black women. There are only 2% of Black women physicians in this country. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Black women physicians is 2% of the doctor population in the US.
Wow.
Even though in this area, in the DC area, there's a lot of us, but like nationwide, so we're a very small population. So when you're carrying yourself in those, areas where people think you're, like you said, they say you're intimidating, I find myself, trying to make sure that I get my point across, but not come across as being angry or, come across as being too bossy or, maybe just keeping my tone of voice in a certain way. So a lot of what you're saying in the book, I'm resonating with because it's just people would make those assumptions of you when you're not in the room, when they're making the decision who needs to move up to the next level.
Exactly. And what we're talking about, this is not code switching. This is adjusting your vernacular, adjusting your tone, because I've had to do it as well, where I can be very direct in my communication, and that can be off-putting to folks. And so I've had to take a step back and think about what I say to people and how it might land on them. And so I think there are some adjustments that we need to make. Bye, Yetta. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think what you said on that learning board is if you're getting that in that constant feedback, if you're hearing it, or actually sometimes it's not even feedback, maybe it internally, maybe there's some adjustments that you need to make, is taking the time to commit to that learning. Like you said, you have a life coach to help you navigate or unpack some things that you want to adjust. And maybe that's a part of it is taking it and finding out if it has any meaning, what meaning does it have, and how can you manage it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Doc. So here's how this is going to work. And I'm actually going to send this recording out to the group so everyone will know what the schedule is going to look like. But we're going to take this week and read chapters 1 through 3. And those of you listening on Audible, it's great. You'll have an opportunity to listen through it. And Audible actually helps you skip ahead, honestly, because you just find yourself in the flow of things. You just got to keep going, which is fine. But I would love if, for anyone who is reading, if you have any questions that you'd love to ask, put them in the event in the Facebook group, because that's a great place for us to gather them and use them this coming week for our next conversation, which will be about chapters 1 through 3. And I would also love if you have anything that you want to just the thing again, there's no big or small question. And what I really feel is the blessing of this conversation is having you here, having the author here, having the voice, the mind here. Whatever the question may be, whatever the feeling, the emotion, whatever the book brings out, share it, because I think it's important for Michelle, as she's writing her next book, to also know what the pulse and sentiments are of women that she can carry with her. And so I think it's super important that as you read, just share any of those jots, just share them, because it's valuable for the next woman to kind of pull something that she may not have seen. And sharing perspective is always helpful. So this is the body of work that I'm just so excited that you're sharing with us, Michelle, because it is indeed a gift.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I look forward to participating on all of the calls. I'm going to make it a point to join, and looking forward to having meaningful conversations.
Yes. So excited. So March 23rd at 9 p.m. will be our next call. And great girlfriends, I am working this tech situation out. More than likely, we will be back in Zoom, because right now Zoom has been found most reliable. So we will meet here in Zoom. I will post that link and recirculate it over and over and over again, just to make sure everyone has access to it. And if you could do me a favor and spread the word, that would be amazing as well.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right. Good night, everyone. Michelle, where can they find you in case they want to look you up on social and stay connected?
Oh, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of it.
Share your handle with them.
Twitter, MGADSDEN William, without the S. And it's the same, Michelle Gadsden Williams, on all of my social media handles.
Awesome.
Link and all of it. Yeah, you can find me everywhere.
Listen, if I were not plugged in, I'd plug in on every network and say hello. And because everyone wants to have a seat at the table. Everyone wants to have access to women who are moving mountains and blazing trails, and everyone wants to be in proximity. This is it. You can't get more approximated than this.
Exactly. So looking forward to real talk.
Thank you so much, ladies. Good night.
All right.
Take care. Have a good night,
everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.